welcome back. Today we're going to be doing part 3 of my beginner's guide to makeup. So for part 3 today I want to focus on skin prep and complexion, like the very basis of our complexion. So first let's talk about skin prep. Definitely, absolutely, one of the most important things that you need to incorporate into your routine is some type of sunscreen. Sunscreen is essential not only for protecting your skin, it also helps with aging, fine lines, dark spots, wrinkles, and obviously also protects us from the sun. I am someone who actually has suffered from melanoma, and so I take sunscreen very seriously. One of my favorite sunscreens, in particular as far as under makeup, is the canmake mermaid skin gel. This comes from Amazon. Another one that I really enjoyed was from Eucerin. I will put a link for that for you up here, or a picture for you. There are some sunscreens that do not do well under makeup, so unfortunately it is kind of a trial and an error thing when it comes to sunscreen. Also, as far as like if sunscreens give you a cast. I do try to stick with sunscreens that are mineral based versus chemical based. However, the mineral based sunscreens do tend to have the cast. So again, it's kind of you kind of have to play or look up reviews online. I mean, that's what I did. I've looked up on YouTube best sunscreens for under makeup, best sunscreens for pale skin, best sunscreens for oily people, because I in particular am dry. One of the ones suggested for oily skin types is the CeraVe Ultralight Moisturizing Lotion with SPF 30. However, you may want something that is more oil free if you have oily skin, such as this one from Neutrogena. So don't reinvent the wheel. YouTube is there for a reason, reviews are there for a reason. Look up online and see what type of moisturizers are constantly recommended for your skin type and your skin tone. But definitely 100% you need to work in a moisturizer every day, regardless of if you go outside or not, because your sunscreen will also protect you from the lights that we're exposed to in our homes. The second thing you're going to want to work into your skin prep routine is moisturizer, especially for someone like me who again has dry skin. Right now I happen to be using Ray Beauty, the Daily Facial Moisturizer. I've used other ones in the past, such as the L'Oreal Age Perfect, the CeraVe AM Moisturizer. I find that by moisturizing my face, it allows me to have a much better base to apply my foundation and concealer. So for people who have oily skin, I would suggest even finding a moisturizer for oily skin. You may want to go with more of a gel based so that it doesn't like slide off your skin, because when having oily skin, your skin is producing all of that extra oil because you're lacking it. So potentially by adding moisturizer to oily skin, you may reduce the amount of oiliness that you see, because your skin isn't having to overproduce to compensate for what your skin is already lacking. So my first suggestion for you is to incorporate some type of sunscreen and moisturizer into your skin prep routine. Next, I'm going to talk about concealer. Lately, I have been enjoying doing my concealer before my foundation on the days I can remember. It is really hard to break out of your routine and do something different. But I want to give you two options for concealers. One that is good for dry to normal skin, and one that is good for normal to oily skin. First, for the dry to normal skin, I'm going to recommend this one. This is tried and true. I have used this for so long that I actually had to grab my backup one because my other one is empty. This is the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind Eraser. This is a multi-use concealer, medium to full coverage. Mine is in the shade 095 Cool Ivory, which is the lightest shade. I really love this concealer. I think this is also great for a beginner because you really can build up the desired amount of coverage that you want. So you're not going in with a concealer where straight out the gate you're getting so much coverage that you feel like you don't know where to blend the concealer to. Like there's so much product on your face that you feel cakey or overwhelmed by it. I feel like you're able to go in with this concealer and really start out with a minimal amount and you're able to build it to get the desired coverage you want to cover up your dark circles. For people with normal to oily skin, I'm going to recommend from Maybelline as well. This is their Fit Me concealer. Now this I also have in the shade Cool Ivory, which I believe is a new shade from them. This is in the shade 01. The reason I like the Fit Me concealers for people with normal to oily skin is they're not quite as hydrating as the Instant Age Rewind. I feel like the Instant Age Rewind concealer does give a little bit of luminosity, a little bit of hydration, whereas someone with normal to oily skin, you're going to want something that is just a tad more, I wouldn't say matte, I'm going to say more satin to natural, just a natural finish. It's not full blown down matte like the e.l.f. Camo Concealer or anything like that, but I think this is a really great one. And also another reason that I love suggesting these two is the shade range. Now when it comes to concealer, generally we see people using concealer for highlighting or coverage, obviously, of your dark circles. So for highlighting, you are trying to hit the spots of your face that you want to bring forward. Anywhere on your face that is bright or light is going to come forward. Anything that is dark is going to recede or go back, which is why people contour to bring back their face to make it look more snatched, and then they highlight the center of the face and the eyes to bring those spots forward. So when it comes to using concealer for highlighter, you really do kind of want to study your face and look in the light and see where the light naturally hits your face. Now as a beginner, there is kind of the typical spots that you would place concealer, which is obviously under your eyes. Now I want to talk about what we normally see a lot of YouTubers and Instagram and TikTokers do, which is that triangular application of concealer. I'm going to highly encourage you and urge you not to do that. Whenever you see people doing that triangular application of concealer, it is actually going to bring the focus down and bring the attention to your face down, because you're going to be highlighting this section of your face. You want to keep your concealer that you're using to highlight up so that it lifts your face and brings the attention up to your face. So when I do concealer, I like to apply it into the inner corner of my eye, skip this little middle section, and then apply concealer going upwards. So then whenever I take my sponge and I pat it out or blend it, the product is going to spread. You see people using so much concealer, it's honestly, it's not the desired application method I would use for everyday, practical, in the workplace, day-to-day makeup. On camera, it may have its place because the camera is going to wash you out a little bit. But for actually going to work, going to the grocery store, going to, you know, your kids' sporting events, I'm going to suggest keeping your concealer in this area as well as bringing it up. So then when you blend it, you want to blend it going in that upward motion, because that is going to lift your eyes and bring the attention upwards to your face. Also, areas that you may want to highlight is the center of your face, which is this area here, down the bridge of your nose, right here by your cupid's bow, and a little on your chin. I would also say to use minimal product when doing this, because again, as you blend, the product is going to spread. So it's easier to start with a little bit of product and then build if you need it, versus applying so much product at the beginning and then trying to figure out how you're going to blend it in to make it look even and natural. So that is my recommendations for using concealer for highlighting. Now let's talk about covering blemishes. When it comes to using concealer for covering blemishes, I again am going to stick with recommending the Maybelline Fit Me. However, instead of having a shade that is very light, which for me, for highlighting, I do use this shade 095 Cool Ivory. You can see how bright that is. I would recommend you using a concealer that is much closer to your skin tone in color, if not as spot on as you can get. So here's an example of that. Here's the concealer that I use for brightening. Here's an example of the color of concealer that I would use for blemish coverage, which you can tell is a lot darker. Now, when you're going to cover your blemishes, you want to do that before applying foundation. I have found that in applying your concealer for blemish coverage prior to foundation allows you to be much more diligent in where you're going to place the concealer and allows you to get a much better blend so that once you do apply the foundation, it looks much more natural and seamless. So here's a clip of me with a blemish on my nose. I went in prior to applying my foundation. I placed a little bit of product, which also I recommend placing the concealer onto your finger and then applying it to the pimple or the blemish to reduce the amount of bacteria that you may introduce into your concealer. So place the concealer onto the blemish and pat it out. What you really want to focus on is patting out around the edges of the concealer to make sure that you have an even blend and that it seamlessly blends into your skin. Now, once you have done that, you want to let it dry down. And at this point, if you feel that you need a little bit more coverage, you can go in with a little bit more concealer. Again, the same way with highlighting, it's best to start with less and then build to the desired coverage that you need. So once you have the blemish covered, again, you want to let it dry, and then this is where we're going to go in with our foundation. All right, for foundation, let's begin by talking about undertone. The three most common undertones are cool, neutral, and warm. A lot of times you will see on foundations, they'll be labeled with something like Fair 10N or Fair 15C or Fair 20W. Well, C is for cool, N is for neutral, and W is for warm. Most people with cool undertones, when looking at your veins, they will have this bluish purple tint to them, which is definitely what I have. People with warm undertones, when looking at their veins, may see more of a yellowish color. People in the neutral category may see more of a green or an olivey undertone to their veins. And this is just one way to find your undertone. Clearly, I am very cool toned. I tend to flush pink. I burn easily in the sun. That tends to lead me to think I am a cool undertone. People who are not cool undertones would be the opposite. When it comes to tanning, you may tan very easily as a warm undertone person. Again, people in the neutral, you kind of lean either way. So this isn't something that I would expect a beginner in makeup to get right off the bat. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult, and this is another thing. Don't be disheartened if you choose a foundation based on your skin tone or your undertone and find that it's wrong. Sometimes companies don't even know very well, and they don't label their foundations properly. And when you purchase things in store or online, the images online are going to be distorted a little bit, and when you go in store, the lighting is going to throw you off. So this again is kind of you have to play around and find what works for you. So don't be discouraged if you choose something and find that it is the wrong undertone for you. That's going to happen. That happens to me all the time. I mean, I currently have stuff in my collection that's the wrong undertone for me, and I just make it work. So don't be discouraged by that. That's just like a starting stepping stone, but don't let that be a deterrent if you feel like you can't find the right undertone of a foundation for you. That company may not offer it as well in their selection of foundations. So that's something to start with, but don't let it upset you if you feel like you can't figure that out. Let me show you a good example of undertones. So here I have the Wet n Wild Tinted Hydrator, which I have been using a lot. This has a very peachy pink undertone. So here is the Wet n Wild. Then I also have from L'Oreal the Age Perfect Radiant Serum Foundation in the shade 10 Ivory. Now this is the lightest shade in the range. However, the undertone is very yellow. So here you can see the difference. We have this very peachy pink, and then here we have this very yellow undertone. So even though they're both the lightest shade in the range, the undertone in their respective ranges, the undertone for both products is very different. So now let's talk about finding your shade. When you think about your shade, there's usually categories in most foundations. Like they'll have their lightest to fair, kind of their, not medium, like their fair category, their light category, their medium category, and then like their deep dark category. So generally, you can pretty well pick what category you may be in and then selecting your undertone in that category. Now, when trying to find what shade of foundation you are, if you're somewhere where like pre-COVID you could actually find the testers and try the testers. You do not want to try to find your foundation based on the shade of your arm. The shade of my arm and the shade of my face is completely different. The best place to test the shade that you are trying to select is right here on your face. So I encourage you, when you go to a store to select a foundation, again, when we actually have testers available to try, is to not wear makeup. Because then you can take some of the tester foundations and place a little swab from your cheek area down onto your neck, because you want to see if this is going to match, because your face is going to be generally a different shade than your neck, but what you're trying to strive for is to match your foundation to your neck so that you have a seamless blend. So when selecting a shade, you want to test the area right here to see if the shade is going to match and blend from your face to your neck so that you don't have a line of demarcation. All right, the third thing to consider when selecting a foundation is the finish. There's generally 3 types of finishes, and I'm going to show you an example of each. The first finish that you may select in a foundation is matte. This is one that generally oily people do tend to prefer. I do prefer it, but the only one that I have found so far that I really love is from CoverGirl True Blend, the Matte Made. However, I am a dry skin gal. So for oily people, you may prefer a foundation that has this matte finish. So I've swiped it on, but I'm going to give it a second to dry so that you can really see what I mean by matte. And the foundation that I am showing you here is the Rimmel Stay Matte Lightweight Mousse Flawless Finish Full Coverage Mattifying Foundation. Another finish of foundation is satin, or what you may hear called natural. This is kind of that midpoint. So for people with oily or dry skin or normal skin, this foundation dries down not quite matte, not quite luminous. It just looks very natural. So I'm going to swipe that so you can see that dry down as well. The foundation I'm using as an example of this finish is the Revlon photoready Candid Natural Finish Anti-Pollution Foundation. And a third type of finish is dewy. This is going to be luminous. This is going to make your skin have a very nice glow to it, which is my generally preferred finish in foundation, as again, I am someone with dry skin. So the foundation that I am going to swatch to show you an example of this is the NYX Professional Makeup Born to Glow Naturally Radiant Foundation. Now I am swatching these on my arm because I've already done my makeup, but if I was in a store testing to find my shade, again, I would want to test it right here. Alright, I gave all 3 of these foundations just a few minutes to dry so that I could show you the finishes. So here we have an example of a matte. If you watch my hand as I move it in the light, there is no shine coming off of it like the dewy one. So that is what I mean by matte. Like when it dries down on your face, there isn't going to be any shine or luminosity coming from it. This is the Revlon one. Now it does have a little bit of shine coming through right now, but when you actually put it on the face and it dries down a little bit, it's not quite as dewy as what's coming off on camera. Now this one from NYX, it is the most dewy. When I move it around in the light from every angle, you can see the dew coming off of it, and it remains that way even after it dries. So this is 3 examples of different finishes. Again, we have a matte finish, a more natural finish, and then a dewy finish that is going to remain that glowy finish even after it's applied to the face, whereas this satin natural one is going to lose some of that luminosity as you blend it out. So to wrap up all of that about foundations, you're going to look for undertone, whether you are cool, neutral, or warm. You're going to look for your shade, and you want to do that by placing it this area of your face and seeing if the shade blends into your neck so that you have a seamless blend and you don't have a line of demarcation. And then you're going to want to determine what kind of finish you want. Do you want something that is matte? Do you want something that is more natural looking, or something that is dewy that is going to remain kind of glowy and glossy looking even after application? All right, lastly, we're going to talk about powder. Now, something that's important to know about powder is that not all powders are going to work all over your face. I have some powders that I use exclusively for under my eyes, and then there are some that I can use all over. Again, makeup is a lot of trial and error. There's also different types of powder as far as powders that are translucent and powders that are going to give you a little bit of color in the finish when you apply them to the face. So for my under eyes, because I don't want to lose any of the brightness from my concealer or add any extra color because I am so fair, I tend to stick with a translucent powder under my eyes. One of my favorites is from Wet n Wild. This is the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Loose Setting Powder, and this is in the shade Translucent. So when I apply this to my face, it's going to set my powder but not add any color. I also can use that all over my face as well as under my eyes. Now, if you are someone who has perhaps a darker skin tone than me, and you do want a powder that you can use to set that is going to give you a little bit of color, I recommend looking into the Maybelline Fit Me line. This is their loose finishing powder, and for me, I have the shade 05 Fair. However, they have a very large shade range. So when you apply this powder to your face, it is going to add a little bit of color. So like, yeah, you can see there, this powder actually has color, whereas the translucent goes on without adding any color to the face. Now, again, this is going to be trial and error to see if the powder goes well under your eyes or not. Also with powder, sometimes people who have dry skin like me, you don't always particularly need to set your foundation. It really depends, like if you feel that your foundation is tacky or not. People with oily skin, you're most likely going to want to set your foundation and your concealer with some type of powder. But just brands to start with, definitely the Maybelline Fit Me is a great one, also because of their shade range, that you should be able to find something if you have a deeper skin tone. And then the Wet n Wild is a great option for translucent, and this package is so large, if you like it, it should last you a really long time. The Coty Airspun is another great one that you can find at Walmart. However, you want to be careful because that one has a very strong scent. So you might want to look for the Coty Airspun that is specifically unscented. So that is this video on skin prep and complexion. Next time we're going to jump into part 4, which is going to be focused on bronzer, blush, highlight, and contour. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, let me know down below. The babies are awake, so that means my time is up. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you will like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.